those cabane struts have wire in them. I'm trying to point out that wire goes out past the tip because it's going to fit into these holes. 1, 2, and then 3, 4. So I go in and I poke those little holes. Now at the base, that one's bent a little so it has the right angle. But you can see that basically you're going to end up poking these into the holes that I've already made with a piece of wire. And they should fit pretty well. I'm just kind of test fitting it here. This, by the way, isn't usually the way I do things. I usually put the V-struts in first, the outer struts, called interplane struts. Then I put in the cabane struts, or the ones around the cockpit. But because of the way the bottom wing goes on, I wanted to add the top wing first. So this is actually a pretty delicate thing to do. But it worked. And that's just my cat talking. And I just sort of test fitting it. And once I got them where they wanted to be, the front struts are absolutely nice and vertical. So those I glued in with thick super glue, and that gave me something solid to sort of deal with. So I'm just eyeballing this again like I'm apt to do, making sure they're about straight. On the plans it shows them slightly leaning back, but in any event, put a little more super glue on the connections where the rear V part of the little cabanes are going to go, so the ones right in front of the cockpit. And then I put some more super glue on those solid vertical ones. Those are nice and solid, and so it made it so that I could have a nice base basically to put this on. And you'll see this actually goes in pretty easy. It's a very well designed model. Again, it has less to do with the modeler. But I plug those two pieces in, and the wire fits right into the holes, just snaps right in place. Look, looks good. The trickiest part is to then put those pieces in. So with a pair of forceps, I just kind of put them in, match them in the hole, and give a little push, and they go right into place. So there it is together, and I'm just making sure, again, it's straight, making sure it's perpendicular, all that sort of stuff. Now the front cabanes splay out a little bit, and they're supposed to be dead vertical, but I'm going to live with that. That's because my covering on my lower wing, if you remember, they didn't butt up perfectly, so they're out a little bit, but still, I don't mind. I'm touching a little bit of glue, and then putting a little accelerator where that went to anchor those rear V struts. And then I couldn't help it. I'm just showing where, well, when the bottom wings are done, they're just going to go right in like so, and they match up. They're going to be easy to move around to make them even and straight. But all we need to do is make the V struts and put those suckers in. It's just very pleasing. The little model really does come together nice. So the next part we make are the V-struts. And so I took a piece of wire and I bent it to the shape of the V-struts. And the very tip, you see there's like a little nubbin sticking out. Those were squeezed together, the wire, to make a little, basically a little attachment point. And that will stick beautifully down into the lower part of the wing. So these were just done, by eye, bending and testing until they end up being right in the middle of the piece of paper that I've cut out. So once they're good, I put some super glue right along the center, and then very carefully drop this thing down, making sure that I got some wire protruding above and then that little foot protruding below, and at the same time making sure that the wire is dead center or as dang close as I can get it. And there it is. Now let it dry a couple seconds, and then I put some white glue on the opposing piece of the struts, and then you just fold these over and you just make sure they line up as best as possible. If there's little errors, you can trim stuff and sand and things, but basically line these things up, and then I squeeze them on top, and the white glue will dry and glue quite nicely around the wire, and you can kind of squeeze the edges to to clean up the edging. It's never perfect, but it's pretty. It looks very good, and the finished model looked just fine. But here I'm just squashing it to make sure the paper sort of folds around. And then I look at the edge, and I use my little tweezers to squeeze the edges closed, hold them closed, and I end up with a single strut that looks good. Color the edges like everything else we've been doing. Every time there's a paper edge, a white edge, you cover it with some kind of marking paper. And then I'm plugging it in, just like I said, bam, right into that bottom wing. Fits perfectly, like it was made to go in. Fits real nice, and so I'm just test fitting all this, and then I've got the pins on the other side. They go up into the lower part of the top wing. Same thing, they plug right in, bam, and they're going into balsa wood, so they're nice and strong. Then you slide your lower wing in. It usually goes in much easier than that. Slide your lower wing in, and then you come around and just plug it in the hole, and it, with a little bit of nudging, it'll align just perfectly, and then you're going to end up putting glue in there. However, turns out my cabane struts are actually a little long, so the top wing sits high. What that does is make that lower wing have way too much dihedral. So what I had to do was extend the V-strut. So I should have worried about this before. I had to extend that piece. It all turned out in the end, but it was not the neatest thing. So I glued that little piece of paper on and wrapped it around the piece of wire. And to make it longer, that's what I'm trying to do with my fingers. It basically looks longer, and it works. There's the extension showing with X-Acto-Blade. You can see it. It's going to be painted later. I used just some putty to help make that extension and sort of fold it in. I had to sand it too, sand them. But now I'm ready to go. I'm going to add my white glue to my lower wing attachment. Pop that thing in. Again, extra glue, doesn't matter. Swipe, it's gone. Put a little super glue on the strut, and there they are. And it's not perfect, but at least they're pretty even. So I was pretty excited that turned out. Now I'm just making sure again that it looks good from all angles, that it's clean. And then when it is, I put a little bit of super glue along the wing root on the bottom, and then just smear it off a little bit. And then a dab of accelerator locks it in place in mere femtoseconds, and make sure some of the other places are tight. And there it is. The strut looks good. It lines up well. Really starting to look like an airplane now, finally. So I'm very pleased with how it's turning out.